Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to our series of talks. If you're new, welcome to our talks. We are a group of CPS students working to make change. We're working with city council members. We're working with coheres and students from CPS. I'm Carolyn Harrison. I attend Western Hills High School, and thank you for listening in. At this time, I will ask Miss Nina to unmute her microphone and turn on her audio.
Thank you, Carolyn. Hi, everyone. I'm Nia Bauke, and I am with Cohere, a community engagement firm here in Cincinnati, and I'm extremely excited to facilitate today's conversation. So as the students are unmuting themselves and coming on with their video, I'll just let you know that we have had the opportunity to have 2 sessions with this amazing group of students, different students, for the past 2 weeks. And 2 of the big action items that have come up in the conversation thus far has been updating curriculum as well as activities in school to help them be more informative, as well as improving student and police relations. So we're excited to have 2 big city leaders on today's call to talk to the students specifically around what they can be doing in terms of the ideas that the students brought up. So if the students can go ahead and show their screen so we can see their wonderful faces. The 3 things that I'll mention really quickly as the students are coming on. 1, it's important to remember that these students represent themselves and their experience alone is really valid and important, and that's why we're here. 2, this is a really hard conversation to have virtually. So just trust and know that there are things happening behind the scenes to continue engaging these students and that there's action being taken by CPS leadership when it comes to the conversations that we have. The final thing is that there is a Q&A that you can add to. So if you have questions for either the students or our city leaders, please feel free to add them in the chat and we will answer them as the conversation goes on. So thanks everyone for being here. I'm excited to talk to these students. They always make me smile, and it's just amazing to see the leadership that they have. So we'll start with our first question, which is just a check-in. I will call your name, and if you could just introduce yourself, the school that you go to, and then tell us how you're feeling today and one thing that you're doing to stay healthy and well during this time. And Carolyn, we'll start with you.
Hi everyone, I'm Carolyn Harrison. I attend West Hills University High School, and one thing that's keeping me off of this whole injustice thing is just really writing poetry and just reading books and having talks with my family.
That's awesome. Thanks, Carolyn. Rachel?
Hi, I'm Rachel Scales. I attend Riverview Academy, and one thing that's keeping me active is my volleyball. I have practice actually today.
Nice. Good luck at practice. Thanks, Rachel. Corinthian?
My name is Corinthian Thomas. I attend Houston High School, and something to keep all this out of my mind is attending football practice.
Wow. Thanks, Corinthian. Keyshawn?
Hello, everyone. My name is Keyshawn Townsend. I go to Aiken Tech High School, and I am doing pretty well today. And one thing I've been doing to basically keep my mind settled is by listening more than speaking my mind. I've been trying to listen to different articles and hear their opinions on the matter and try to formulate my own opinion on things.
Thanks, Keyshawn. So staying informed, trying to stay up to date on what's going on and listen to others. Patience?
Hi, my name is Patience Stowe and I attend Houston High School. Things that I've been doing is basically playing in my backyard, like walking, listening to some music, volleyball. I skipped practice today for this, but just trying to, I don't really exile it out. I still want to pay attention to what's going on because it's going on, but I block out the negative, so that's all.
Thanks, Patience. I'm sure your coach is happy that you're here with us today, so thank you for skipping practice. Simone.
Hi, my name is Simone Simmons. I attend Walnut Hills High School, and something that's been keeping me active is basketball conditioning. I actually just got finished with it.
Nice. Thanks, Simone. Looks like they went too easy on you. I don't see you breaking a sweat or anything.
Oh, it's all on my shirt and stuff, not really on my face.
All right, thanks, Simone. Brandon.
My name is Brandon. I attend Schroeder High School, and one thing that's been keeping me active is football practice.
Thanks, Brandon. And Kanisha.
Hi, my name is Kanisha Matthews. I attend Western Hills High School, and one thing that has been keeping my mind off of things is just working and listening to music.
Thanks, Kanisha. And thank you all again for being here. And just as a reminder to everyone who's tuned in, you can ask these students questions in the Q&A chat. So if you have a question, you can ask it and we will try and get those answered as our conversation is going. So thank you guys again for joining the conversation. We're excited to hear from you. So before we move into the larger conversations with Chief Isaac and Deputy Superintendent Amat, we just want to have a conversation with you as students to kind of hear from you about how you're feeling and how you're unpacking everything, especially when it comes to racial discrimination in this country and in our city. So we'll start with the first question that we have, which is, when you were younger, what was your first experience with racial discrimination? Did you feel like, at what age did you feel like you really recognized that discrimination was something that was real and happening to you? Bjorlin?
Well, before I attended Western Hills High School, I graduated from a Catholic school. So I was in a predominantly white school, so it was really different because my school previous to the Catholic school was a Christian school, so it was predominantly black. And it was just a difference. Like the teachers, they were different, the students were definitely different, and it was just a whole different feel of the school. And I wasn't really used to it because I was used to my teachers happy to see me and eager to teach. And the teachers at my Catholic school, they were just the total opposite.
So do you feel like they targeted you or treated you differently because of the color of your skin?
Yes. It always was awkward because they barely talked about black history, and when they did, they would bring up slavery and stuff, and all the white kids in the classroom, they would turn to all the black kids and just look at us.
Mm.
And it made me feel awkward because it feels like we're still in slavery now because of what's going on, because nothing's really changed.
Yeah. So just feeling like going to that predominantly white school, you kind of felt singled out, especially when they were talking about issues that had to do with Black people, which can be really hard.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Patience, I know you had your hand up.
Yeah, I have two. Well, one basically with hair has been a big thing. So I would say some of my teachers or some of the non-black people would be like, you have a lot of hair for a black person, or they just be like, your hair's just so they wouldn't want to say it or something, but they will always say something about my hair or put me certain places because of my hair. And then one thing about raising hands is you can notice by raising hands. It's always what I notice is it would be I'll raise my hand, right? They'll make eye contact to you and then go to a white kid or something like that. And then but it's that used to and that's when I always knew because mom never sugarcoated, she tell you it, you have to you're going to have to she once she noticed it, she was like, okay, I'm gonna tell her this is gonna happen often now. Like, and she noticed because I used to tell her how I wanted my hair, and I told her like I didn't want poof anymore and stuff like that. That's when I noticed that I was different, and it wasn't because of like, it was because of my skin and my hair. So, I forgot, but it was really I wasn't allowed to say stuff that some of the white kids was like. It would always take as in defense to me, like I would be mean or something. But they'll say like stuff like, if I would have said to another black kid, it would have been okay, and if they say it to me, it's okay. But if I address it or say something back, they would tell me brush it off, or well, you do come off aggressive, and it wasn't. That's when I noticed like, okay, this is an issue. But that's
So feeling, you kind of talked about microaggressions there, which around making comments about your hair, just little things make you feel uncomfortable. And also feeling, it sounds like ignored and misunderstood a little bit too, in terms of how people are treating you or understanding, you may be trying to address an issue and feeling like you're being combative when you're not. Thanks, patient. Simone?
So I had like a few experiences with racism, like the little things when I was little. People always touching my hair and asking me if it was real or not. And then in elementary school, I went to a predominantly like it was more white than black. It wasn't very diverse. It's in the suburbs, so a lot of people would touch my hair and ask me if it was real or not. And then whenever I'd come in with a new hairstyle, my teachers would always say something about it. And that kind of bothered me because I just didn't like that very much. And even at Walnut, there's still sometimes where I experience racism. Like I was in AP US history and there were only 3 black kids in my class. And then I sat in a corner with all white kids and they would make black jokes about me, and then they would like try and say the N word, but I would stop them because that made me uncomfortable. And a few years ago, me and my mom and my sister went to the store and we were being followed by security the entire time we were in the store. Like every time we had turned a corner, we turned around and he was there and he was following us. So like these past few years, I just realized I was extremely prominent. But when I was little, I tried not to think much of it. It bothered me a lot, but I tried not to think much of it. And then I went through the phase of always wanting my hair straight. And I even wanted to change my name to something really basic because I felt like my name was, I guess, too ethnic and it wasn't like good enough.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so much. Similar feelings, it sounds like, to patients in terms of feeling singled out, a lot of those microaggressions, making comments about your hair or making jokes in class, and also feeling, just misunderstood, feeling alone a little bit in the classroom, which I'm sorry to hear from all of you guys. These aren't normal things. I think we've normalized our experience with them, but no one should feel that way. Keyshawn, I know you had your hand up.
There we go. So my first experience with racism was when I was born. Being born a black male was my first experience with racial discrimination. Because when I was born into a family of poverty, and the poverty that I am in is generational, and it's an evolution of racism, and yeah.
No, that makes sense. And just feeling like, that generational piece continues, right? Thank you for sharing. Does anyone else have thoughts on, their first experience with racism and discrimination? Rachel?
Like Simone and Patience was saying, I went to in elementary and like middle school. I went to a predominantly white school. I was like maybe 7 of us, like in the whole school. And so when they would like talk about like Black History Month was like a big thing in my elementary school. So when they would talk about Black history, they would like almost make us like the teacher, like, hey, teach us this. Like, hey, we don't know as much as like we're trying to learn our Black history also. So they would turn to us like, hey, you're Black, so you should know this. Like, but we didn't. We're looking for you to teach us this. And so that was always like a big headache. Like I was almost like Black History Month from like February to March. We were almost like, hey, Rachel, you should know about Martin Luther King. Hey, Rachel, you should know about Harriet Tubman. Hey, Rachel, you should know about this because you're Black. And I would look at them like, hey, I don't. I know what you guys tell us, and that's very little of what you teach us in school. So I've always had that problem. Luckily, now that I'm in high school, I have a, a variety of kids and a variety of teachers to like sit down and talk to us about stuff like that. But in elementary, I didn't know anything about, like, I knew who Martin Luther King was, I knew who Harriet Tubman was, but I didn't know if they didn't do what they had did where I would be now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so wanting more, and we'll get to that too when we talk to Deputy Superintendent, but definitely wanting an updated curriculum around the things that you're learning in the classroom. And it sounds like your peers were kind of looking to you to educate them, to be the resident expert on all things Black and just feeling that pressure. Has anyone else, just show of hands, has anyone else felt like they're supposed to know it all or speak for all Black people when they're in the classroom? I definitely felt that before. Sometimes Patience. I know you had your hand raised too, Patience. Do you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, okay, so I forgot to say this one thing, like I probably did want to say, but like one thing that I noticed that it's been going on and still going on, the way that I talk. Um they say like, can you say that word again, or how do you talk? Like that's crazy. I wouldn't think you talk like that, or you talk like a white person. You can say it, or they'd be like, I just wouldn't think you would know that. Like it's like and I would like shrug it off, like maybe they just didn't know the word. But the way I kept it was like the way you talk is just so smooth. Like I wouldn't think that of you or something like that. Or it was just like, and then I started to notice that it came out of my teacher's mouth or white people's mouth, and I'm just like, it's because of my color. You wouldn't think I would know those words, or the way that I talk, it would be all slang and stuff. And you see, it was like, no, I didn't mean it like that. Like, because I would start like addressing it, or they'll see the way I look, and they're like, no, I'm just saying I like the way you talk, and it's like, it's okay, like it's not okay, but I caught it already. That's one of the things.
Yeah, it's not okay for them to say things like that at all. And again, that word, and it keeps coming up because it happens a lot in schools, and I'm saying it to you guys, microaggressions, kind of these brief and passing comments about, oh, you talk white, or oh, is that your real hair, which really can make you feel singled out. Rachel, did you have your hand raised?
Yes, ma'am. I was like, that's so funny she mentioned that because I was going to say that too. I get that all the time. Like, hey, you talk like a white girl, or you're just a white girl in a Black girl's body. And I will be like, what does that mean? Just because I don't use slang words or I don't talk improper because I speak proper English. Is that why it's hard for you to believe that I'm a black person because I don't talk slang all the time or I don't use incorrect English? Like, no, that doesn't make sense. And they will look at my face too and be like, oh, I didn't mean that. I just meant that I'm just really surprised of how well you speak. Like, nah, you meant what you said. And I just caught what you said and you didn't think I was gonna catch it.
Why do you think people say that to you guys?
Because they think all
You can go ahead.
because they think all Black people talk slang or they talk improperly. Like instead of saying four, they'll say foe, or like instead of 100, they'll say 100. Like I don't say things like that. It's 100. It's a four.
I feel even if we say that, like, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, and that doesn't describe who you are by a word. Like, and it's like when you address it, I'm like, why is the words coming out of my mouth? Okay, we're having a conversation. The only thing that should be going in and out is a conversation, not looking like she's black and she's no sophisticated. Okay, she's black and she knows. Like, that's not how you have a conversation. And even if I do use ain't here and there, that's not the only me. That's not how you describe patients. Like, oh yeah, she's black, she says ain't. And that's not how it goes. Like, I like get to know a person and y'all just feel like, well, in the black community they say this, like that's literally, it's just labels or how some of them was raised or what they see on like videos, media and stuff like that. So it's just all around.
Yeah, so I mean, that labeling piece is a huge component of it, right? The stereotyping, and that shows up a lot in school. Kiorlin, you had your hand raised, and then we'll go to Simone after that.
Like, they look at like other black, like every black person as like ghetto, or like they like came from the hood. But like I know, like I speak proper because like my family, like that, like they even tell me, they're like, you speak proper, like why are you talking like that? And then um like it's just like I know when I went to my Catholic school, like I couldn't like like use like do some of the things that I would do with like my black friends or with black family members, because like they're not black and you really can't like you like I was just mostly focused on my education and fitting in. But now that I'm older, I'm like now like I wish I can go back, because I shouldn't have to like change how I like act or like how I talk around them. I should just be myself.
Absolutely, you should absolutely just be yourself. Simone, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I was going to say, I also heard that a lot when I was in elementary school, that I acted white or that I talked white. And sometimes I still hear that from people I go to school with, because I use proper English and then I don't talk slang. I think it's like degrading to me, because it makes me feel like you think just because I'm black that I'm not intelligent. And that's another thing. I feel like people base our intelligence off of our skin tone, and it's like a chip on our shoulder. My mom tells me I have to do everything in excellence, because not only am I black, but I'm also a young lady. So that's like two different things. And I feel that people are judged, like we are judged. People don't think that we're as smart as them because of our skin tone, and I don't think that's right. And it made me extremely uncomfortable this year, because there was only 3 black people in my entire history class, and there was about 28 of us. So, and I just felt like singled out. And sometimes they would look at me whenever they talked about black topics, and then it was just not really, it wasn't very comfortable for me. And then like the black jokes, they really irritated me. But I tried to make it look like it didn't bother me, because I didn't want to seem angry or aggressive or anything like that. It's just a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a lot of pressure. I know that it's a lot of pressure. Did you talk to your teachers about it, or did you address any of that with your peers in your history class?
So I talked to the one other black girl in the class I was cool with about it. And then I also have a white friend who's a guy, and he like understands what's going on. He saw it, like he understood. And then we had an extra credit assignment about Black history in February. So I wrote about what I had experienced in that classroom for my teacher to read. But he never talked to me about it, like aside from everyone else, but I did write about it.
Well, thank you for doing that. It's important that you address those things. We're going to move on. I know that was just one question. We could probably unpack our experiences with racism and discrimination, especially at school, in so many ways. But I do want to ask you all a couple more questions before we move to our conversation with our city leaders who we have. So this Q&A is actually a perfect follow-up to what Simone was talking about in terms of really trying to make her voice heard. So writing about her experience in that history class, which is so important. This person asks, is there any way that you've really felt like your voice has been heard after all the things that we've talked about experiencing? Has it been going to a protest, a discussion, or an open conversation with someone? Where are the places where you felt like your voice has been heard and your experience is validated? Rachel?
I can say I'm luckily now to have a group of teachers and peers that are really open-minded. Well, most of my teachers, let me correct myself. Most of my teachers are open-minded to learning new things and to listening to what I have to say and not being like, well, I'm the authority, I'm the adult, this is how it goes. They're really open-minded to listening to different different things that happen in my life, not only being a woman, it's also being a black woman. So I have to work 10 times harder than the person next to me just to get the same thing. Like I have to push myself way harder than the person that's standing next to me just because she's a white female, just to get the same opportunity, just to have the same door open for us. So I have teachers that are really open to learning from me and listening to me and like changing what they had thought to now changing to what I've taught them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. So kind of your open-minded teachers. Do you have, and you can just like shake your head, do you have like one-on-one conversations with them, or are they more like open discussion with the whole class?
Um, I have a really my history teacher is really nice, Mr. Hess. He's really open. Like if it sometimes it's maybe a one-on-one conversation, sometimes it may be a class full of kids. It all depends on how like what we're talking about in the moment. And he may ask a question and then we'll just have a discussion. Sometimes it's one-on-one, sometimes it's in a classroom, and everybody has their own opinion and we listen to each other's opinion. It's not like, oh, your opinion's wrong because everybody's entitled to an opinion.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Rachel. And I think what I'm hearing from a lot of you guys too, it's you want to learn and talk about Black history, but how your teacher sets the room up and how they facilitate that conversation is really important to make sure that it's open. I know I see some familiar hands going up, but I do want to give Brandon and Corinthian an opportunity to weigh in since they've been quiet, and Kanisha as well. So do either of you guys have some thoughts on the conversation? You can just unmute yourself.
I have discussions with my mom and my peers about it, and I really get to see I really get to hear their points of view, and if we don't agree on something, we just agree to disagree, and that's how I feel I got my voice out. And being on this panel for the last two of them, it helped to get my to let my voice be heard too.
So really like trusted adults, especially your family members. It sounds like it's been a great place for you to get your voice heard. Corinthian, do you have any thoughts?
Yes. I usually talk to like one of my coaches who I'm like really close with, who's like he always like gives me a ride to the school if I need it, and he also like helps out with stuff that I like really need. So I feel like real comfortable talking to him and having conversations with him.
With your coach, it sounds like you have a great relationship with him, which is awesome. Brandon?
Usually I talk with my mother about it and she gives me information and she listens to what I have to say too. And my coach, I just left practice at 10. And sometimes my sister, but not really.
Okay, so a lot of your family members, close trusted adults are the folks that you talk to and feel the most heard.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Brandon. Bjorlin?
For me, it's my dad. He's like so it makes it like less awkward because he can relate to a lot of like the things that I'm going through because he's a black male, so he can relate to the things that I'm going through, and he just gives me advice to like keep motivating myself. And I also have my English teacher, Miss Meg. She's a white woman, but she's like the total opposite. She's not racist at all. Like she is the nicest, kindest person I've ever met. Like, and during this whole quarantine thing, she's been asking me like, how am I doing? And when school was in, she'll ask me like, how am I feeling? Like, am I okay? Like she'll like notice my mood swings and she'll just put me to the side and like she'll make me feel comfortable about it because like this is my first year at Western Hills, but me and her already have a close.
That's awesome. And it's awesome that you have a relationship with someone. It sounds like family is a huge one. coaches, especially Black coaches, people that you can relate to and talk to, as well as open-minded teachers like the ones that Carolyn and Rachel were talking about, teachers that are just willing to have the conversation with you. Time is flying by, so we have one more question for this group, and then we're going to move on to our discussion with our city leaders today. So I'm just curious, obviously, there's a lot of discussions happening, not just with folks your age, but all across the city. And, what are you most hopeful about? What is it that you want to see happen this upcoming school year for students like yourselves? Simone?
I would like to see more diversity in the classrooms, especially at my school, because I take a lot of advanced classes, and what I don't see is a lot of Black kids in those advanced classes. It's a majority of white kids, and it's easy to feel uncomfortable in there. And I would like to see more diversity in our classrooms, especially the advanced programs.
So for you, it's diversity in the classroom, and in particular, getting students of color on the advanced curriculum tracks, like the ones that you're talking about. Thanks,
Yes.
Simone. Patience?
One thing I would like to change is like, not, I wouldn't say the word like sugarcoating though, but like, meaning like, it just seemed like every grade I go up, I learn the same thing. And like, they change the topic like American history or world history, like they do that, but then it still go back to slavery, something like that. And don't get me wrong, I know we need to learn that, but if we have to learn that, then I want to be like, what's going on in the actual, like, right now. Like, y'all would like to address what happened to us back then, but don't try to make it seem like it's not happening now. Or like bring in the problems today in life now. Like and
You want to see advanced and updated curriculum with current events where you're having conversations about those things in the classroom.
yes.
Thanks, Patience. Carolyn?
I would like to see diversity, like Simone said, and also I would like to see like in like our schools and like Catholic schools as well, like because I know I feel left out when they talked about like their history. They really talk about my history, so like I would like to see like more like talks about like Black history and not just like about slavery, but about like the good things Black people do.
Yeah, so continuing, we talked about that in our last session too, just updating the curriculum, especially in history class, to really honor the accomplishments of Black Americans is super important. Any other thoughts before we bring our city leaders on? Patience.
So in my school we have this like big auditorium, but never use it. Like it's like we don't have like what's those called, assemblies anymore. Like no one talks at all in our school. We just go about the whole year, and people probably don't even know their teacher's name, or they don't know our names, like, or stuff like, no one cares anymore. That's literally what it seems like. And I just want to like, even if it's just one time a month, like let's just come as a school to see everybody, to talk about stuff. Like, how do you feel about this? Do you feel like you're being helped? Like none of that happens anymore. You just fail or pass. Like that's literally how it feels. That's it.
So you want to see, in addition to updating the curriculum, you want to see general assemblies and just opportunities for everyone to kind of check in as a larger school and make sure that they're feeling heard. Simone?
Yeah.
I kind of want the same thing because Walnut is more of an independent school. So people with learning disabilities and things like that don't really succeed that much because with our teachers, it's very much fail or pass. And they have help nights and stuff, but other than that, they're pretty tough. Like you don't get a lot of one-on-one time with them. So I would like to see like the student and teacher connection to be strengthened because it's pretty hard. Like if you have any type of learning disability, Walnut can be a really hard school for you to succeed in. And especially because it's really big, it's 7 through 12, there's so many kids, it's easy to be left out or feel forgotten. And I feel like our principal, he's not really engaged. Like, he doesn't talk to us as a school, and he only really comes out when there are problems. So I feel like he should also try and strengthen his relationship with the school as a whole. Like, we don't have assemblies anymore unless it's time to pick our courses for the next year, or unless something happens, like somebody gets busted with drugs or something. But I feel like we should have some sort of check-in or something just to strengthen that relationship and feel like we can come to them. Our counselors do a pretty good job of that, but I feel like our principal could work on that a little bit.
Thank you for sharing that, Simone. Show of hands, how many of you guys would want to see like a general assembly, almost like check-in at the beginning of the school year, whether it's virtually or in person, just like an all-school check-in? I love that. I think it's a great idea. And, I remember long ago being in high school and going to the assemblies and having conversations. But that proactive piece, Simone, I think is what you're talking about. So not just hearing from school leaders when things are bad, but just checking in and making sure they know how students are feeling is incredibly important. So before we move on to our conversation with city leaders, I just want to thank you guys for sharing your experiences. As I was taking notes, some of the big themes that came up were just feeling, unseen, unheard, dealing with a lot of microaggressions in school. And I encourage you, just like you are on this call, to continue to speak up and speak out against those things. They can help move and change the culture of your school just by acknowledging that they're wrong and not okay. Some of the more hopeful things that I heard were around the relationships that you have with many of your coaches and teachers who look like you, as well as open-minded teachers who don't look like you, who are willing to hold space for those conversations. So I think that is incredibly important as we move into the conversation with our city leaders, just that emphasis on relationships with adults. So I'm going to have you guys stop sharing your video, and I'll ask our two city leaders, Chief Isaac and Deputy Superintendent, come on. Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hello. I can. Thank you. Before we get to the questions that we have from the students, I would just love, obviously, for you all to introduce yourself, but just to share your initial reactions to some of what you heard from the students as they were talking just now. So, Deputy Superintendent, I will start with you.
Hi, Deputy Superintendent Ahmad, thank you. First, I just want to just say thank you for inviting me to this forum. I'm so impressed with our students. I have taken lots of notes. So I think my experience here, I'm going to get so much more out of it than they're going to get from me on this panel. So just thank you for inviting me and being a part of this forum.
Thank you. Chief Isaac?
Good afternoon, everyone. I guess it is still afternoon. My name is Elliot Isaac. I'm the police chief of the city of Cincinnati. I am extremely impressed and proud of our young people. I tell you, just anytime I have an opportunity to do something like this, I always learn so much. So much of what I heard today, I truly can relate to and connect to. So much of what was shared, listening to our young folks talk, I really connected to my own experiences growing up and going through junior high and high school. So I truly appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation, and I'm glad to see everyone.
Thanks, Chief Isaac. Thank you to you both for being here. As I mentioned at the beginning of today's session, two of the big ideas that came out of the conversations that we've had thus far are updating the curriculum, kind of updating some of the things, especially when it comes to history class. So we're going to get into that with you, Deputy Superintendent, and then with you, Chief Isaac. Students were bringing up, how do we improve our relationship with police officers, both in school and out of school? How do we help coach them to think about how to interact with us as teenagers differently so that we can see more positive outcomes? So we're going to have that conversation with you. But before we move to our separate conversations, I'm going to have our first person get on and ask their conversation. So Simone, I'm going to have you ask your first question, excuse me. So Simone, if you want to get on and ask your question to our leaders here. One more second. I know she was driving, coming back from basketball practice, so I will ask the question for her. And it kind of relates to what the students were talking about themselves earlier, but her question was, do you personally feel like you've had to work harder than everyone else based on the color of your skin? So Simone talked about that, especially with being at Walnut Hills, feeling like she had to be excellent, feeling a lot of that pressure. Have you guys felt that way, especially in your position?
Absolutely. And I got that first lesson from home. My great-great-grandmother wasn't allowed to learn how to read. My grandmother had an 8th grade education, and my grandmother raised me. And that lesson was, you will have to work twice as hard. In this system, there are obstacles put up to put you in a box, to track you. That's why I'm an educator today, the first to graduate from college, because of that first lesson from home, that it is systemic and things are purposely put in your way as a female, as an African American, and it's up to you to be resilient, work hard, and move forward. So I just, at this moment, just give so much respect and honor to our families who are teaching those life lessons at home, because it's different. We're not all starting at the same starting line.
And thank you. And I was just going to say, I think your phrase, especially that word resilient, as the students were talking about the things that they deal with, is just, they are resilient, and you have to be resilient. Chief Isaac?
I couldn't agree more with the deputy superintendent. That has been my experience as well. And moreover, not only are you or do you have to work harder, you are expected to continually prove yourself over and over and over. No longer, it doesn't matter how long you're in a position or how much success you've had, you're only as good as your last at bat. You're continuing to expected to prove yourself over and over and over. And there are always those who have the perception that you were only there because of some other reason, some affirmative action or something of that nature. No matter what your experience, your qualification, or how well you do or perform your job. So definitely, and I agree. I couldn't agree more. We all stand on the shoulders of those that have come before us, that have instilled in us that we do have to work harder.
Thank you guys for both sharing that, and couldn't agree more with that experience. So we'll start with the first part of this conversation. So Chief, I'm actually going to have you stop sharing your screen, and we're going to move to a conversation specifically with Deputy Superintendent Amat, just about what CPS is planning on doing when it comes to updating curriculum and thinking about how to address what the students talked about today. So Rachel, you had a question for Deputy Superintendent?
Yes, ma'am. My question was, do you believe that teachers are really open and minded about what's happening in society right now?
Yes, absolutely. Rachel, you shared about Mr. Hess. Carolyn shared about Miss Meg. We have teachers in Cincinnati Public who are very open to what's happening in our society. What I will say is that our experiences and our perspective may be different. So just thinking about police brutality, not too long ago, I was in Target. And at that time, I was a principal, and it was reported that a Black woman was in the store in the dressing area stealing. So as I'm going out, the doors closed on me while I'm exiting Target to get in my clothes. They closed because they have called the police on me. So I matched this description of just an African American woman coming out of the store. So it slowed my pace to the car. I was approached by the police officer, and of course I gave all my information, shared my receipts. I happened to go use the ATM there. And I share that story because I think having that experience, personal experience, I have a commitment or a view around that issue. Some of our staff may not have that experience. So when I heard Simone talk about telling her story and writing a letter, or there was a classroom set up in Mr. Hess' room, Rachel, where you can have open dialogue, whether it's private or in a class discussion, that's when we can build the understanding of what our students, our young people are going through, because I do believe our teachers are committed and open, but maybe sometimes they don't have the perspective. So I encourage our young people to tell their stories, whether in a written format, whether it's in a classroom discussion or individually. But we do have committed teachers, but sometimes the experience may not be there. So we can do that through relationships. Great question. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. And it sounds like an idea could be to highlight those teachers that you were just talking about. So showing other teachers that there is a way to create those environments in school and build those relationships. Patience, you had a question.
Hi, Miss Deputy.
Hi, Patience.
Okay, mine says, as an educator, how do you feel about the lack of African American history stories and accomplishments in our curriculum? And what step can we take as a district to the systemic change to our curriculum?
One of the things that I'm frustrated about when I hear the term African American history, it's history. We shouldn't have to wait for a course. We have been here since the beginning of time, civilization. So we are a part of those stories. The question is who wrote the stories and who gets to tell the stories. So to help with that in our curriculum, we have to ensure and we have to do a better job of what materials, resources are we using, what's in our curriculum, and are our teachers actually using it? Because if you look at our standards, they're very diverse in our stories. But do we have the materials? Do our teachers have the background knowledge and understanding to incorporate Black and brown experiences? I believe it was you, Patience, who talked about a relevant curriculum. So it doesn't necessarily have to be years and years ago. What's happening in our community right now and tying it into curriculum, whether it's a history curriculum, whether it's math and science or reading. So I think we have to do a better job of looking at the resources. We have to do a better job of understanding what's happening in our city, in our globe, and then tying it to making it relevant for our students. We also have to do a better job of talking less and allowing our students to bring in their stories and share. Because it's one thing to be, so I hear over and over again about African American history. It's one thing to be a consumer of the knowledge, but I really hope that we build an education system that our students are creators of the knowledge. So years from now, 100 years from now, that your stories will be told, that you created those lessons. So it's going to take some time, and this forum right here is a place to start. But it is my hope that we infuse African American contributions, history in every content area, and not only offer a course.
Thank you. Thanks, Patience, for asking the question. A final question for you, and there's so many ideas that are coming out, and I want to let the audience know that my group is taking notes on these things and collecting these ideas. So we're not just having a discussion, we're really going to write down the ideas that are coming out of the discussion that we're having. So the final question for you, Deputy Superintendent Amat, is from Keyshawn. So Keyshawn, if you want to come on, do you have a question?
Yes, hello. So, firstly, I just want to say that my class and every other class has been engulfed in a pool of prolonged fear from witnessing police brutality, racism, inequality. We have been silenced by potential failing grades, which leads me to question, during Trayvon Martin's case, did Black Lives Matter? Tamir Rice, Eric Garner, Yolanda Thomas, Jerry Brown, Terry Price, during their cases, CPS, had an unrealistic expectation that, excuse me, had an unrealistic expectation for us to succeed while fear was waiting for us outside of those doors. So what does the future for CPS African American students look like when we have not been equipped with the proper skills to actually live? Like, I've never learned how to use a credit card properly. I've never learned how to balance a check. I've never learned how to apply for a mortgage. Like, I have no sets of life skills that will help me for the future. And I am now going to my senior year, and upcoming senior year, I will be in my first financial class. And that financial class, from what I've heard, has not helped any of the seniors that have graduated this year. So what does the future look like for CPS African American students?
Great question, Keyshawn. First, I want to address the Black Lives Matter and all of the names that you mentioned. And our kids are aware of this, and how do they come in the school environment without us addressing those matters as an African American male, and you seeing this every day. I think we have to not only talk about the academics, but the social emotional well-being of our kids, and having relationships and classroom environments where we can address those issues, because that is at the forefront of a lot of our students' mind. That's one. Two, the safety of our kids. Do I feel comfortable in my school environment? Do I feel comfortable in our community, in our neighborhoods? So I believe this is not an education issue. It is a societal issue that we have to come together, whether it's the police department, healthcare, education, to ensure that we wrap around services for our kids to be successful. As far as the curriculum and offering realistic content of what's going to help you, from how to get an apartment, the importance of credit. You talk about the use of a credit card. When is it appropriate to get a credit card? Because I'm going to tell you, as soon as you hit college, if you decide to go to college, you're going to get bombarded by applications. And what does that mean of establishing credit? It's another way to label you. So we have to do a better job of educating our students on everyday living expectations, and the reason, the why is important. Why are these things, why are applications given to young, probably unemployed students to establish credit when the first time they're going to college? Or why is it important that we tie our curriculum to current events that are happening in our neighborhood? So I would say the future for CPS is to have more student voice. That is clear in our strategic plan, and we have to move from listening to action. So, yeah, it is my hope that this forum is, yes, listing out some things, but really, how can we act? What are the action steps that we can take to ensure our young people that we have heard them? So this is just not a monthly, weekly occurrence, but what can we do to act to say, yes, we have done these 3 or 4 things based on the feedback we received from our young people. And if we continue to listen and act, I think our future is bright for CPS. The last thing I would leave with, one of your questions was around hope. And I truly believe we use hope as an action word, but I see hope as a noun. Our kids, our students, you are the hope. You are the future of this country. So just by being, just by sharing your voice and writing your narrative, it will be great. So I just encourage our young people to continue to push us, push our thinking, push for action, and hold us accountable. And you can do that with voting coming up, hold your public officials accountable, and get involved in local politics. So just thank you, Keyshawn, for that question, and hold us, CPS, accountable for the recommendations that you guys have provided us today.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Ahmad. And Keyshawn, thank you for just your thoughtfulness around framing that question and sharing your experience. It's incredibly important, and this is just the beginning of conversation. So I hope you'll continue to push all of us as leaders in this city to think about how we can support folks better. So some of the ideas that just came up that I heard was highlighting teachers that are doing the right thing. Maybe even having a professional learning group for history teachers in particular to think about how they can hold space, talk about current events. I know this came up with the students, but the idea of a mental wellness check-in, and you talked about that with the social emotional learning, of just having some sort of general assembly to ask, hey, how are you guys feeling? There's been a lot that's happened this summer. What's going on? And then also what Keyshawn talked about with just some realistic content of how to navigate the world and be prepared. So those are just a few ideas. I'm sure there'll be more that we're going to explore. So thank you, Deputy Superintendent, for your time. Just so appreciate you and talking to these students. So with that, I'm going to have Chief Isaac come on. We're running a little behind, but this is such an important conversation. So hopefully we have 10 more minutes to really talk, and I imagine we're going to invite you guys back as well. Is Chief Isaac still here? We have someone new.
Can you hear me okay? No.
Yep, we can hear you now.
Can you? Okay. Chief Isaac's
Yeah.
going to rejoin. He lost his link for a second, so
Oh.
hopefully he'll jump back on here in a second. So this is Steve Saunders. I'm his public information officer. Hi, guys. Thanks for doing this call.
Hello.
Yeah, so hopefully he'll be jumping back on here in a second, but keep an eye out for that. I guess something shut down for him on his computer, but he plans to get right back on.
Oh, no.
I'll try and handle
Okay.
any questions that people want to ask in the meantime. If you want to throw them my way, that's fine.
Sure. If you want to, I don't know if you been listening to any of the conversation that we've had thus
I have
far?
been, yeah, I have been listening, yeah.
I'd be
I
curious
couldn't get
to
connected
hear.
earlier.
I would be curious to hear, your thoughts in terms of what some of what the students were talking about, and then we can invite some of the students to ask questions.
Sure. Can you see if Chief Isaac pops back on? I don't want to take away from his time when he's logged back on. Just let me know and I'll.
Yes, he will appear on the screen when he comes back on. We'll make sure of
Okay.
it. I don't see his name right now, but
All right. So if you can hear me okay, hopefully you can. I want to put my other earpiece in, maybe it'll get better audio. Yeah, I heard the discussion. It's excellent discussion. I think we need to have more discussion with young people about their concerns and everything from what's going on in the schools. And I appreciate the assistant superintendent who's on and you guys facilitating this conversation. I think it's so important to listen to our young people because they're our future leaders. This is the end of my career in law enforcement. I've been in law enforcement for 30 years. Chief Isaac is probably around the same time, more time on the job than me. So we've both seen a lot of transition in law enforcement over the years. I know there's a lot of distrust right now, obviously. I think it's important for your students that are on this call and other students to understand not a single police officer I know that I've ever had a conversation with about what happened in Minneapolis or other situations where police injustice or police brutality, police violence, whatever you'd like to call it, but what happened in Minneapolis, none of us think that that was right. We all see it as immoral, unethical, and criminal. And we have to look at that situation as affecting us, even though it's 700 miles away in Minneapolis, it still affects us all in law enforcement. If you're wearing the badge and the uniform, it doesn't matter if you're a black officer, white officer, male officer, female officer, whatever your background is, if you're wearing the uniform, we're all being painted with a broad brush right now. And we get that. We understand the frustration. But at the same time, in order for us to help people understand where we're coming from, and understanding our perspective, it takes things like this. It takes this dialogue and discussion to take place so we can listen to people so they can understand our perspective. A lot of people think that cops are like robots, that we're not necessarily people too. And all I can tell you is, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I bleed and have DNA just like everybody else, and try and look past that badge and that uniform and look at the person. There are bad cops out there, no question about it. But I can tell you there's way more good cops in the world that care about the communities they serve in and are truthfully trying to make a difference and impact young people's lives and everybody's lives. Looks like I see the chief jumping back on, possibly.
yeah.
His computer's doing something. So that's my perspective. Again, I'm Steve Saunders, a public information officer. Chief, I just kind of filled in for you. I did a little tap dance and tried to answer Naya's questions. And some of the students, I don't have to stay on. This is your time. These kids don't get an opportunity to talk to the head law enforcement officer for the Cincinnati Police Department all that often, but I'm glad I was able to give a little perspective from my viewpoint as well. And I'll mute my screen or get out of here. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. My
Yes, sir.
apologies, had some technical difficulties here.
That is okay. And I know we're running over time. It sounds like this conversation cannot be had in probably one session. So hopefully there'll be an opportunity to come back. But if you have some time right now, I still want some of the students to ask you a question. And, the way I would frame it is in our last session, a lot of the students were talking about kind of feeling misunderstood, especially with their relationships with police officers. And also they highlighted some bright spots, especially with their school resource officers when it came to those of them who showed up to go to their basketball games, who got to know them personally, and just what a difference it made in terms of their relationship. So there's a little bit of the frame in terms of what the students are going to ask you today. With that, if Keorlin is still on, if you could come on and ask your question for Chief Isaac, that would be great.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you? My question for you are, what are your plans for the police department to have a stronger relationship with us, the Black community, and the students in the city?
Well, that's a very good question. And first of all, let me start by saying I view myself as part of the community. The police are part of the community. We're your coaches, we're your neighbors, we're the person you see in the grocery store. We have families and kids and live in the neighborhoods just like everyone else. We're part of the community. Um, Specifically, you mentioned the African American community. I'm an African American man, so obviously that is extremely important to me. I have daughters and I have nephews, and many of the concerns that you have, I share those same concerns. I'll also say that relationships are the key to everything, and everything that we do, it's about relationships. And I share that concern just to make sure that, my family, my friends, that you all are all safe. And when you encounter a police officer, it should be a positive experience. So when you talk about the young people specifically, the work that we do, we try to do a lot. And there's still so much more that can be done. And we look for continuing opportunities to do it. Some of the things that we do, I know we have our ongoing programs where we have our cadet program and our police explorer program. Obviously, a lot of you have heard about those. The explorers typically go from age 13 to 21, the cadets from age 16 to 19, and the cadets are a paid program. And we try to get young people to be involved with that. We do a youth summit every year where sometimes we have between 300 and 500 kids that come out and spend a day with us. And the theme behind that is being young but not silent. And I think that's the key to everything that we've been talking about in the last couple of weeks is really young people not being silent. That's the thing that I have seen with this movement is that there are young people and their voices are being heard and their voices matter. I think that's a cultural shift in our country. When I was your age and younger, kind of the theme was kids were to be seen and not heard. That's no longer the case. And I think that is what is very different here is that your voices are having an impact. A couple of the other things that we do, obviously, in the other programs, we run a basketball program every spring, our Queen City Swiss. We just started a program with the Bengals called Dive Right. We do our Pitch for Peace. There's so much we do. We do Shop with a Cop. We do our Christmas programs, and every year we do a youth live-in that we actually pay for Camp Joy, where we bring over 50 kids from all parts of the community to come and spend a week with police officers at a camp to get to know them, to build that relationship. The one thing that I would like to see, though, is, and that's why I was real happy to be invited with you all today, is for you all to reach out to us and pull us in where you see a void and where we can connect with you. That is critical. And I think that is something new that I haven't seen in the past, that you all are reaching out to us. And I think it's being so very helpful. So that's just a few of the things and some of the plans and some of the things that we're trying to grow to be able to connect with the community. Now, we have to do that with every section of the community, with our young people, with our business owners, even with our senior citizens. So we look for those opportunities to connect every part of the community.
Thanks for your question, Carolyn. And if you could just stay on for a second, I have a follow-up question for you, Carolyn, as you asked that, which is, one of the things, and Chief Isaac started talking about it at the end of his answer, the importance of them coming to tables that students are setting. So events like this where students are really leading the way. Are there particular ways that you would want to see the police be more involved at school or in things that you know about, that you want to see them just trying to build those relationships with you guys?
Yeah, like this one right here, and like it's just like I agree with you about you saying like that when we see like an officer, like we shouldn't like shy away or anything, but like they kind of like put that image in our head because like I know it's not like us or like our family members like dying, but like it basically is us because we're black and like that same thing that happened to George Floyd can happen to my dad or me or anyone else. And like I know all bad cops aren't I know all cops aren't bad cops, but you kind of like put like your feelings first because you don't really know like what their intentions are when you get pulled over by a police officer when you see one.
Thanks, Caroline. Patience, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, I didn't know if I was. I mean, okay. This is for you and when you on. He was basically saying that like, it's no doubt that there's bad cops out there, but there are good cops out there. But the cops ever speak out if they wasn't told to? Like, we had this discussion because we brought y'all attention, but like if nothing would have never, I never had it in your mind like, let's make them know that we're still here. The good is still here. It seems like the good stays silent and let us focus on what's going on in the bad, but then want to tell us when y'all feel like y'all targeted that it's good still here, but we won't know that because the good is still.
I think that's a very good point. The reality is that I believe most cops are good. The challenge that we have is what we don't do well is we don't tell our story well. We don't tell our story. A lot of people get into this type of work not to tell their story. They've got into public service to work and to serve people. But we need to have those stories told. There are bad people in every profession, no matter what profession it is. There are some cops that are bad. There's no question about it. That is not the majority of it, you know. But I think that what we don't do is tell our story very, very well. We have to do a better job of sharing the other things that we do. You got to remember there are 750,000 police officers in this country that make encounters with citizens and people every single day, multiple encounters, and 99.9% of those go very well. But the ones that don't, those are the ones that we see, and those are the ones that we have to focus on and make sure that there are even fewer of those.
That makes sense. And you guys, I know that we have some prepared questions, but if you want to hop on and ask a question, feel free to do so. Patience, you had asked the question that I think Corinthian was planning on talking about, which is that piece of some people staying silent. So if the good police officers are staying silent when bad things happen, how do we know who's good, right? So it's kind of what you were getting at. So I appreciate you. Corinthian, did you have some? I know that was similar to the question that you wanted to ask. Was there any other follow-up that you had for Chief Isaac?
Other than that, I don't really think that I have like any other questions or concerns about how things are being handled, because I'm sure that they're doing everything that they can and that they like actually want to truly help us, and that they're also going through like hard times with how people are judging them off of like how a couple cops are acting.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult when you see something as terrible and as wrong as what happened to George Floyd. It's very hard to come out and say, well, we do a lot of stuff with kids. We do a lot of stuff with other people. When you see something so horrible as that was, you don't want to hear that. You want to hear how something that horrible can never happen again. And I understand that. I get it. It makes sense to me. I understand why people are angry. I'm angry. I've done this job for 32 years. And the reason that I've gotten into this work is because of my experience really when I was about a lot of your ages that happened to me, experiences that I had with police and how I was treated. And one of the reasons, and so many of the people that I work with, they got into this line of work too, to say, when I'm a police officer, that stuff will never happen. I will never treat anybody that way. I won't let another officer treat anyone that way. And I see it happen all the time. I've seen it happen throughout my career. So that's the key. Everyone, wherever they are in their life, they have to stand up and speak out when they see wrong being done.
Keyshawn, I know you have popped on. Did you have a question?
So just not too long ago, I was gonna go out and, well, not too long ago, I was going to go and protest, um, and my friends, they went instead, and they were actually arrested, and so on, etc. So I have seen numerous videos and pictures of the imprisonment of these protesters, and it was extremely inhumane treatment. I heard that some of them, well, all of them didn't have access to bathrooms. There was rare access to food, and it was just very inhumane. And I just wanted to know your opinion on it, Chief Isaac.
Well, you're talking about one specific night, and that was a night where 300 people were arrested. It certainly wasn't our plan to arrest 300 people, and it certainly wasn't the Hamilton County Justice Center's plan to intake 300 people at one time. So what happened was they were overwhelmed by the number of people that were arrested. So there were people that sat for a period of 6 or 8 hours, and the story about when that some weren't allowed to go to the bathroom. What happens is when you have that large a group of people, you can't take them all to the restroom or allow them all to go at one time. They're taken incrementally. So there were some people that waited. Now they talked about not being fed or whatever. They serve 3 meals a day. Depending on which time you come into the jail, you don't get a meal until, it's not like as soon as you walk in the door that you're provided a meal. But because we did that, the very next day, they were. That's not normally how it goes. It depends on if you're arrested. Say we weren't in the middle of any civil unrest. If you were arrested at 1 o'clock in the morning, you wouldn't be provided food until 7 a.m. that next morning. And that's kind of how that played out. It certainly wasn't an intent to place anyone in a humane condition, but I think that it did overwhelm the system at that point. But we're talking about hours, not days.
So just a follow-up question to that. So what was the reasoning for arresting 300 plus protesters?
There was a curfew, and there was significant damage done throughout the city. We had a police officer that was shot. We had been bombarded with rocks and bottles, and there was a lot of destruction that had taken place in our city. And because of that, a curfew was implemented.
Thanks for your question, Keyshawn. Is there something you would like to see in the future? And obviously, you asked those questions for a reason. So what would you like to see in the future in terms of how things were handled?
Is that for me or for Keyshawn?
For Keyshawn.
Oh,
So personally, with my experience and with what I have witnessed, we are in an era where there is going to be some type of change that happens, whether it be microscopic, is going to be some type of change. And I believe that it is time for everyone, including police, including all law enforcement, including teachers and administrator and any type and every program, to finally stand their ground against a government that is suppressing an entire race of people. And that, the whole thing about race is, I just don't like the word race, because we are all just one race. We are all from one race, the human race, and it's just overwhelming. And I just want everybody to just stand against the government, and let's make like official change. Instead of having these microscopic changes, we can all officially like come together and just I'm kind of going off.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I think one of the goals as we continue to have these conversations is to be able to facilitate you guys thinking through how you want to see these things addressed in the future. Because you asked those questions for a reason. You want to see something different. So we want to hear your thoughts. Chief Isaac, before Patience, I know you have your hand up. I know that we're over time, so I just want to make sure that you have time for maybe a couple more questions, or if you want to wrap it up.
I'm good for a little while longer.
Okay, so let's ask the chief a few more questions and then we can wrap things up. It sounds like, which is no surprise, that there's more conversations that these students want to have in the future, and it sounds like the chief is open to that, so we'll keep that in mind. Patience, I know you had your hand raised, so I want to give the floor to you.
Yeah, okay, so like for you, one of the top over the police and stuff like that, have you ever felt like you had to like stand your grounds against your own coworker? Have you ever seen like your own eyes seen like some racism play out from your own coworkers, and did you say something? Like did you do something like from you, because you're still a human being, you being Black also, have you ever felt like cornered or not being able to say something about it?
I've seen it a number of times throughout my career. I've challenged it when I've seen it. More recently, since I have been the police chief, when I've seen it, I've tried to take action against those. If you remember, about a year and a half ago, we had officers that were using the N-word. I took that very seriously. I implemented serious discipline. I gave them long-term suspensions. The challenges that we have, though, is that we have union contracts. They at times can fight that. That is when I recommend some of the reforms that need to take place, there are a lot of things in place. And one of the major things that we have to be able to do is hold people accountable. Accountability is the key. But the challenges you have when you have so many other systems and mechanisms that make that difficult, it's very difficult to discipline people that you see do different things. It makes it hard, but that doesn't mean you give up. You continue to fight it. You continue to address it, and you definitely have to make a stand when you see racism. Absolutely.
Thanks for that question, Patience. And I think it's for all of you guys in terms of the stuff that you talked about happening at school. It's the same thing, speaking up. Brandon, you had your hand raised.
Chief. So, as young adults, we are always taught how to talk and engage with police officers in order to make it home safe and stay alive. How does that statement make you feel, and will there be a change to training and teach officers how to engage with us in our community?
That's a very good question. First part, how does it make me feel? It makes me feel terrible that we have to have that. But it also, I know that it's necessary. I've had those same talks with my children. I've had those same talks with my nieces and nephews, and I've had those talks with other friends and young people that I've talked with. I know the reality is that is critical. Sometimes, just depending upon how that encounter goes, it can be a life and death situation. I'm not naive to that. I think it's sad that we have to be at that place in our country, but it's still real. Here in Cincinnati, in the Cincinnati area, I'm fairly well known. People recognize me quite a bit. But when I travel, when I go to other cities, people don't recognize me. They see me as a fairly large black man. And those things cross my mind. When I get stopped or if I'm stopped by a police officer someplace, I'm very cognizant of how I behave as well, and to make sure that I'm not in danger, or people that I'm with are in danger as well. It's a real concern. How do we deal with it? We continue to train. I think we continue to be transparent about it, and I think that's why I'm a big advocate of our body worn cameras. That was one of the things that I've done since I've been chief, is to make sure that our officers wear body worn cameras. So all of those interactions with citizens are captured, so that we can get a good idea of how our officers are behaving. I think it's important that all police officers wear body worn cameras. I think it's safe for the citizen and it's safe for the officer, because there are times when, and I've seen it a number of times, when people claim the officers have done things that they simply have not. So I think that is definitely something that concerns me.
Thanks, Chief Isaac. I'm curious, a follow-up question to that. You mentioned the training piece, and with cultural competency and working with students and teenagers in particular, would you ever be open to having students train you guys on how to interact with them? So opening it up to them to talk about it.
I think that would be amazing.
I think this group would be great at that.
I think that would be amazing. But just a little bit on that real quick. I know they have more questions, but we work very hard at that. Not just implicit or unconscious bias. We try to look at also, one of the trainings that I brought here this past year was, we did a training for all our officers on training called Empathy Through History. And we wanted to teach our officers basically a lot of what we've talked about this afternoon, is just the interaction of police and the Black community, the evolution of how police came into being and how that interacts with African Americans, and why that such a large part of the African American community feels the way that they feel about police. It's because of the history, and it's undeniable. But to make sure that our officers are educated and are aware of that, so that they know that the work that needs to be done around overcoming that. So yeah, I would be very interested in having some training from these young folks, no doubt.
I think that would be a great project, and I know that's something that these students in particular would be interested in doing. Simone, I know you had your hand raised for a long time. I'm going to give the last question to Simone. We are going to have another one of these conversations, and Chief Isaac, you are cordially welcomed back, because the students clearly have a lot of questions for you. So just for the interest of time, we're going to end with Simone's question, and then I'll wrap things up, and we'll certainly look at the right next steps so we can properly continue the conversation. But go ahead, Simone.
So one thing I've noticed is that not really here, not really in Cincinnati, but like a few cops, some of them are like trigger happy and they pull their guns out when it's like not really necessary in some situations. And then there are like a few officers who are just flat out racist. But like, is there a way that you can tell that when you're considering to hire them? Like, is there some sort of safety protocol to make sure that you don't have just some blatant racist on your staff?
I think that that's important. And through our hiring process, we do an extensive background investigation. We talk to their neighbors, we talk to their former employers and co-workers. If they're a young person, we even talk to their teachers to find out as much as we can about that person. They also go through a series of psychological tests, and a portion of that is to try to determine if there are any biases. Now, I will say there are people that slip through the cracks. So when people do and they demonstrate something, I think the key there is being able to address that and hold them accountable, as I was talking about earlier. And I think that is how we we manage and we deal with those people that do slip through the cracks that may be racist.
Thanks, Chief Isaac. And I think the other piece too is that good people can hold racist beliefs and act on that racism. So not just individuals that slip through the cracks, but we all hold bias in how we act on those things and how that shows up, especially with individuals that have so much physical power, can impact people's lives forever. So thank you all for asking those questions to Chief Isaac. Chief Isaac, thank you for answering them and being willing to go past time to do so. I want to give you an opportunity if there's any other final thoughts that you have, Chief, before I wrap things up.
Just thank you all so much for having me. This is always a very special time when I get to hear from young people, to hear what you're thinking, because like I said, this movement is different. There's such a significant voice from your generation involved in this, and the changes that will be made now will be what impacts your life as you all move into adulthood and the children that you will have one day. It's so important that you all pay attention, that you have a voice, and that you stay politically involved in what's happening. But what I do urge is that you get all of the information so that really lasting and meaningful change can occur. I really appreciate all your thoughts and your comments. Your questions were amazing, and I look forward to being able to do it with you all again.
Thank you so much. And thank you all the students that showed up today. You guys are amazing. And there's no doubt in my mind that if we were to run some sort of student-led forum around this with the police chief and others, you guys would do an awesome job. So I hope that we'll continue to think about opportunities to engage and follow up on this conversation. Leadership and myself will go back and think through the right next steps based off of the questions that you guys had today. Rachel, I know that you're going to end today's conversation with the last word, so I'll ask everyone else just to stop sharing the video, and we'll leave it up to you to sign us off today.
Thank you for attending our third CPS Speak Up and Speak Out Now. Speak Up, Speak Now. My name is Rachel from Riverview East Academy High School. Join us again next Wednesday.